If you want to know four essential tips to get athletes out of pain and back to sport faster, this is a perfect episode for you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome all new listeners, and welcome back to those who have heard my content in the past. If you want to know four essential tips to get athletes out of pain and back to sport faster, this is a perfect episode for you. Before I go on to the podcast, what is new, what is better in life, and what are the updates? So much going on behind the scenes. I have my upcoming study hall. If you haven't signed up for that you need to be in it. It is me going over strength conditioning programming with case studies with students or attendees from my summit course. So if you're wondering, like, how do I get back to, is this program a little bit too advanced? Is it a little bit too easy? What should I do? So I'll be going over real case examples. So I'm working on that. Definitely sign up for that. It is on my website, drchrisgarcia.com. It's on the banner, it's on my links, and we'll do whatever you want. It's on there. I just came back from a weekend with the fam, and it was good to just get away from the house and get away from all the chaos that is at home. You'll always find things to do. There's always dishes to wash. There's always things to like just buy a time with and do things that you should be doing and distract you. So we got away. We went just locally here in San Diego and just had a great family weekend, which is great. We went to the beach, and I really enjoyed my favorite part. Where every time, at the end of every day, my family, we always ask the same series of questions, and one of them is, what was your favorite part of your day? And I really like it because it's kind of insightful. It gets your kids, it gets my kids anyways to reflect and what really was a great part of your day. And so at the end of it, as a parent, it's easy to ask, and you also have to answer that, right? So, what was your favorite part of the day, Dad? Is what they'll say. And yeah, mine was over the weekend was boogie boarding with my son. He's getting to be a better swimmer, and so going under whitewash is scaring him less, which is great. And he's going to be 6 sometime this month. Yeah, so he's going to be 6, and so it's been good to see him grow. And now being on the whitewash, and we went further out in the beach with the boogie board, and I pushed him into some good waves. So I didn't have a boogie board. I was just literally I just fed him into the actual wave, and he loved it. He loved every minute of it. He felt safe. And I said, "What's your favorite part about it?" He says, "When you push me, like I love the feeling. It's going fast." And there was a couple times where he fell off pretty aggressively, and of course, as a parent, you're concerned. And I remember every single one. There was one where he did a handstand, literally a handstand, and rolled right over. And I remember he popped out of the ocean and he gave me the thumbs up because he just knows that I need to see that head above the water and thumbs up. So that was definitely a highlight. Just being with the kids and at the beach and getting toasted, getting very red. I don't enjoy a lot of sunblock or sunscreen, so I am feeling it at the moment in my back. Anyways, so that's good there. Fitness is great. If you don't know, I'm on my cut week. I do these every 2 to 3 months. And it is where I encourage my communities to come together, and we do a cut week where we do a caloric deficit, a carb deficit, and a sodium deficit. And this came off of a routine that one of our clients and athletes goes through right before a competition. And so I wanted to try and see what that felt like. And it is a mental barrier. It is a tough thing to do. And so this round we're not going so aggressive, where it's not such a big of a jump. So I get like 2,000 calories, which is not bad at all. Before I was only getting like 1,400, and that is a big problem when you're doing 7 days of that. So this is a calorie cut for, I think, 10 days is what we're doing right before their upcoming event. So on a calorie cut, and that starts today. So I'm really excited about it. We have, I think, over 20 people on this one. We have more states now. We have a great state of Ohio joining us, and we have somebody from Northern California. So thanks for joining our family. So yeah, that is what's happening. All right, let's go on to the podcast. Let's get on to the good stuff. All right. So how do you get athletes out of pain fast and back to sport faster? So The reason I came up with this is because, as you guys know, I have my upcoming study hall Tuesday, August 16th of 2022, whenever you're listening back to this, and I have my upcoming foundations course. So I had to think about like what is it that a lot of PTs are asking for and want to learn, but they still don't have maybe the most confidence with, or maybe it's the tools in the toolbox. There's different reasons why people have challenges getting people out of pain fast. And some is like total technical skill. Like you need the one magic like exercise or manual skill to like overcome that back pain. But behind the scenes, no matter who comes at you at what time point, there's some foundational things that you need to be doing to ensure that the other hours that they're not with you, that you're maximizing the recovery. And so I labeled it Foundations. My upcoming course is the Foundations course in September 17th and 18th of 2022. And I labeled it that because there's foundational things that you need to be doing, like that's outside of the clinic. Inside the clinic, there's always great, beautiful things that you can do. And I'm an advocate for it. But I think that behind the scenes, if you don't fix this, you're not really a sports physical therapist. I think that you are a great clinician. But for somebody who wants to take it to that next level as a sports PT or a healthcare provider who can really help somebody get back to sport fast and then stay there. Now, I'm not just talking about getting out of pain. I'm talking about getting to sport fast. So I came up with 4 tips that I think I would give to anybody who's aspiring, one, to work on the pain reduction, but two, to get them to the sport side. And those are 2 different ballgames. Pain and return to sport, 2 different things. You would think like, well, if I get them out of pain, they're back to sport faster. No, 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 because they've probably maybe even become a little deconditioned. They have not practiced as often. So there's things you have to consider outside of the pain management. And that's where I think our typical position or influence within the healthcare system has been dropped or not ideal, because we typically don't get the opportunity to work with some of these things. So if you're hearing this and you're like, oh man, that sounds like so much fun, these are all variables I'd like to be able to modify or adapt, then think about my study hall to begin with on Tuesday, August 16th. If not, come to my foundations course. It's a really good opportunity to look at like what it takes to be a really good sports PT versus a good clinician. 2 different planets. Okay. All right. So number one, what is the number one thing that I will do outside of like treating them, and how do I get this person to be pain-free faster? The number one thing that I highly recommend is you minimize added stress to the area. So if you think about this, pain all comes from added stress, right? If we're talking about like true pain, musculoskeletal pain, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. There's repetitive stress over time that you have strain and stress that then turns into pain. So this process of excessive stress is not just by like weak glutes or poor core stability, whatever it is. There's so many factors, right? And I can tell you one thing, that you will reduce the pain in the local area, but what we're trying to do is reduce the strain and stress across the week and across their practices and across their sport season. So in order to do that, you actually have to know what you're looking for and what are the added stressors that are like compounding their pain. And so one thing you have to do is decide what those things are. So I call those just external variables. So that might be their ADLs, it might be their work. So think about this. If somebody had a medial knee pain, anterior knee pain, and maybe you can solve it with taping, treatment, whatever fancy exercise you want. But if they're walking up and down stairs as part of their work responsibilities, that becomes very tough to navigate. What if they stand for a prolonged period of time? What if they work at like a bank and they're like a teller and they have to stand for 8 hours a day? I mean, that's impacting their recovery, because that's just added stress. So maybe they stand in recurvatum, knee extension, right? So in hyperextension, what if they're added stress on the retropatellar superior surface? Now, you can fix their knee strength all you want, but if they continue to stand on that recurvatum, you're not going to get them out of pain long term. So you have to find these external variables that are adding up from a compound perspective over time. And I think that I think we think about it as a profession, but we always go towards the short-term gratification. We are a short-term gratification profession. Like we're always like, hey, how do we get you to pain? Like how much, what's your pain level today? What's your pain level yesterday? What was it at? And you're always trying to get pain, and which is, I understand we have to do that, but it's short term. I'm trying to play this long game where I know that if I can get them out of pain now, that's great. I have to fix the external variables to reduce the repetitive stress that are going to continue to impact this person going back to sport, either in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. And when you look at total volume of total stress, I think that what we manage on a musculoskeletal standpoint is probably 10 to 20% of their total pain. And what really is one of the more important things is the external variables in their daily life. That's about accounts for, honestly, up to 80% of their total problem. But they don't know any better, and it's our job to show them that. So I think that, yes, this has to do with position and posture and work and their ADLs. I think that you need to help them identify what those things are and help them find solutions to reduce that strain across time. So the number one thing I'll do is find the external variables that are adding stress to their life. That's number one, like the physical stress barriers. So that's number one. Number two is I think you have to maximize their nutrition and sleep. Now, some of us might not feel comfortable having this conversation because we're like, oh, we don't, like I don't want to mess with their nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a dietitian, blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, can you like point them in the right direction, have a conversation about it? And if they're not, point them to somebody who can, because ultimately you can train all you want. You can exercise all you want. However, if you have added stress at work and you have a work that requires you to walk for a long period of time, stand for a prolonged period of time, you have neck pain and they have to sit for a long period of times, there's only so much we can control, but helping them like just identify the challenge allows them to be in a better position. So that's step number one, identify the problem. Number two is, what are the other variables that could help with the recovery? We naturally are a pain relief based profession. So we're always trying to figure out, how do we reduce the strain? But what we also need to focus on is, how do we increase the rapid recovery, which is going to be your sleep and nutrition. So how do we advocate? How do we tell people that they need to pay attention, have the conversation? Even if you don't have the ideal like scenario, most of us say like, oh, how's your sleep? And they're like, ah, poor. We're like, oh, that sucks. Anyways, how's your knee? I think you bypass one of the critical things that is going to help them recover from this pain that they're having. And so one of the things I'll do is I'll just generally talk about sleep. An ideal world, how often are you sleeping? What logistically can you sleep longer? Why don't you sleep longer? Is it the phone? Is it Instagram? Is it YouTube? Is it because you have the TV on? Like, what are the things that you need to do to set yourself up for success? You're not telling them to sleep an exact amount of hours. You're trying to set the scenario so they can recover longer and recover better, so they can recover faster. So I don't necessarily indicate like, oh, well, I think you need 7.2 hours of sleep. That's not the conversation I'm having. I'm saying, in general, guidelines are 6 to 8 hours based on what your body needs, blah, blah. So how much do you think your body needs? 7. Great. How many you're getting now? 5. Great. What are the barriers to you trying to get 7 hours of sleep? Well, it's my kids, my TV, it's the phone. Great. How can we reduce some of these things so that you can recover, especially in this short window? Now, when you're talking about short timelines, that's probably your biggest challenge is, I only have 3 weeks to recover. So the taping and manual treatment that I'm about to do are only going to do so much. Now I need help from the reducing the additional strain and increased recovery. So these are the conversations. If you're like, Chris, how do you navigate short timelines? These are some of the variables that I do. You have to, because I only have whatever 7 days a week times 7 days times 24 hours times 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever that number is. I only have that much hours in that cycle to reduce your strain. Not possible when you only see them once or twice a week to completely get them out of pain. Impossible. Not at a high level. Not possible. So have a conversation about sleep. What are they doing? What's ideal for them? And what do they need help with to get to that point? And honestly, asking the questions just gets their brain going. Perfect. Next, nutrition wise. In an ideal world, what does nutrition, like perfect nutrition, look like to you? I'm not here to be a dietitian. I'm not here to do that. Is there a way that we can start to upgrade your nutrition or your protein intake or your water intake or anything else to help expedite healing, just to make sure that all your cells and everything else, all cellular processes are working at their best. So those are basic conversations I'll have. You don't have to be a dietitian. You don't have to be a nutritionist. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying have the conversation so they're now aware of like, well, I never thought about that. Like, what if I need better like protein synthesis? Maybe I should start at like picking up my protein again or whatever. Like I was doing that before, but I stopped, whatever. Get them to think a little differently outside of just the VMO or the GLUT or whatever fancy thing is like up nowadays. I'm talking about how do you impact massively impact their recovery. Those are two elements that definitely need to be included. So number one, minimize the added stress to the area, the external variables. Number two, maximize their nutrition and sleep to make sure that cortisol levels aren't as high. Make sure that they're maximizing their recovery in general. And then number three, now that you've taken care of like their home and work environment and their sleep, that's great. You've taken care of that shell. Now, what about their practice and training schedule / volume and intensity? So I think what you have to do then is ask, okay, if you were part of my summit, either we did the webinar or you're part of the summit course itself, we did an extensive needs analysis checklist, right? Like, what are the things that you need to be able to be successful? You need to ask these questions in order for you to figure out how to map out the best possible program. And one of those things we talked about was you need to know their schedule. You need to know their volume and intensity leading up to it. So if you have a game in 3 weeks, what typically is happening on Friday? It's a walkthrough. Great. What do you do on Thursday? It's soccer. If you're like it's low contact, we're doing a little bit of sprints and we're doing a little bit of plyometrics and minimal contact, and it's a high intensity and low volume, low duration workout. Great. What's Wednesday? It's off usually. Okay, what's Tuesday? It's our long duration, longer runs, and we do more strengthening. Great. So if you can work backwards, you can figure out like, what do I need to get them prepped for? And currently, what can we do now that they're still allowed to do with modifications? Now, if you don't do this, this is where I think the gap happens when people are like, well, they're out of pain. Let's just let them play now. There's a large chunk of things they're missing out on. The number of reps, keeping their nervous system and their lung capacity aerobic or anaerobic in the same peak condition that they need to be able to participate in sport in. So there's one thing on getting them out of pain, and this is, I think, the hardest part for clinicians. Like you're so focused on pain, and for those of you who know, like I'm very passionate about this. I think that pain is like just a portal of entry on how we can help people beyond what they do. I think pain is so easy to like reduce. It's easy. The hardest part is getting them fit, keeping them fit, and getting back to sport and keeping them in sport. That's the art. And where we as a profession only dive into is pain management. Like I think there's so much we can do, and it gets me frustrated when I see that people are coming back deconditioned, where they have no technical skill, they didn't work on any stuff, they weren't strong, they didn't have any endurance, they didn't have any strength, they were atrophied, and we sent them back. That's a disservice that I think that we do. And I think what that has to happen is you have to ask better questions to set them up for success, which means that you have to have now the skill set to know what to do in that time period. Get them out of pain, know what their strength and conditioning looks like, look at their practice schedules, what intensity, how much contact. Great. Now, what can you mimic on your side to make sure they still get those number of reps in? Maybe not with the high contact or high intensity, but they can still be prepped and working on the background. So you have to know what that is, so that way you're creating a platform while they recover so that they're ready to jump at the peak of their performance when they're ready and out of pain. So number one was minimize the added stress to the area. Number two, maximize nutrition and sleep. Number three, monitor their practice and strength training volume and intensity and make modifications accordingly. You have to. And the last one is, once you know like all of this, in general, you should be able to do probably 50% of this on the initial evaluation. 50%. And the rest of it's going to come on that second, third follow-up visit, whatever it is. But it's got to be done early. And you got to create a full, this is number 4, that you got to create a full plan of care outline at the initial evaluation so they have a clear roadmap. Now, if you're new to this and you've never heard my content before, I'm a big proponent of you set the roadmap early. Now, if you're like, well, I've never heard of this, I don't, like, how would I set a full plan of care? Like, how do I know how to do this whole thing? There's so much uh, preparation for the initial evaluation that is required to set the roadmap early. And what's the benefit? The athlete knows exactly what the plan is, and you can forecast and predict when their exact return to sport is, or 70, 80, 90% return. And that's hard as a clinician because you're like, well, what if I mess up? And I think we're always scared of that. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably like OCD like me. You're probably type A. You would love to be the best. You hate to be wrong, and you like planning. And the problem is that if you can't plan, you avoid it. So you don't even have the discussion. So you just work on the knee. And one of the best things you do is forecast that schedule. And if you're slightly wrong, it's okay. All they want is a plan. They want direction, not perfection. And for you as a clinician, all that means is build out general timelines and what percent you think they're going to be at leading up to the event. So if they're 4 weeks out and you know they need to be 100%, but you're like, based on your pain, it's going to take me 1 week to get you out of pain. You still need to do some, basic strength. You need a little bit of muscular endurance. You still need some time for aerobic and anaerobic capacity, and I have to build your plyos all within 4 weeks. There's no way I'll get you to 100. I'll probably get you about 90% by week 4, 80, 75 to 80 at week 3, and 50 to 60 at week 2. I'll get you 25% next week. At least they have a roadmap. Now they can talk to their coach and be like, hey, listen, I might be out. Let's start talking about a sub, but there's a chance I might be back. And so they have plan A, plan B. And if you have that early, they can make plans and like literally work with maybe their parents, or they have a plane ticket, they have a hotel waiting. Like, am I going through with this? And all you're doing is giving people a better roadmap. I can't promise anything. However, based on my skill set and everything I've done, this is generally what I've seen, and this is what I can forecast for you. Okay. And they appreciate that. That's what most athletes are looking for. They just want to know, is this possible or not? So this requires you to be prepared for the case, have a basic outline at the start of the evaluation, ask really good questions, ask what their training volume is, ask what their nutrition and sleep is, ask what their work environment is, and literally that'll set them up for the plan of care. Versus if you go through your whole normal evaluation, you get the goniometer, you get all the muscle testing, you do all that stuff, and then they ask you at the end the dangerous question. So, am I going to be able to play? And you're like, yeah, yeah, no, maybe. That's called a let's see how it goes PT. No planning, no nothing. You just did them a disservice. Now they don't trust you. Now there's no value in what you do. You're basically somebody who is going to help like treat them, but not to help them get to that point. There are two different things. One is to get them out of pain now, because it's like, how do you create that bridge to get them back to sport? And you have the skill, you have the capacity. It's just all the framework, and it happens at initial evaluation. That means that you just have to have better preparation leading to it. So short timelines is literally my passion. Like short timelines, like very short timelines, or complicated timelines. Whether they have an event, they're a professional athlete, elite athlete, community member, and they have a short timeline, like 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, and they're post-op or post, big injury, blah, blah, blah. Like, I love this because if it can't happen on paper, it just can't happen. It's like thin air. You have hope. I call it hopium. You're literally just trying to make things out of thin air. And I think you have to map it out on paper. Can this work? And you work backwards and you figure out, you're like, actually, it can, but everything has to go right. But that requires you actually like how to have thought into it and actually plan. And most of the time now, I think a lot of therapists are so busy, they don't have the resource, they don't have the time. So make the time. Do it on the nights, do it on the weekends. There's people that want the help, and there's a couple good people and patients and athletes that want it. Give it to them, please. Once you get good at this, you probably only have to do about 5, 10 times, and you'll see trends, and you're like, oh, totally possible, totally possible, totally possible. Whoa, I was way off on that one. But you just get better at forecasting and predicting. I know it because I am obsessive about it. I coach and mentor my team on this. And this is literally how we approach our athletes. So if you're kind of lost and you're like, well, Chris, where do I start? Like, how do you work on short timelines? I mean, so that's why I made my foundations course. It's literally getting athletes out of pain and back to sport fast, without flare-ups, with confidence, and building those tools in your toolbox. If that's like you, and you're like, hey, I don't have confidence with that, I don't even know where to start, I don't have those tools, or you literally are like, I just need to fine tune a couple things, I would say join me at the foundations course. So it is virtual and in person. You have both options. It's in San Diego. I'd love to be part of it, have some cold brew with me in the morning, have happy hour with me in the evening, hang out, ask me all the questions. If you're going to do virtual, great. Like we've had at my last summit course, we had 4 different states in there. We had California, Ohio, Colorado, and I think Nebraska. Oh, yes, I think so. Anyways, so if that's for you and you're like, hey, I can't travel, great, do the hybrid option. And what we're going to be going through is short timelines. What would you do in these scenarios? What type of questions are you asking? What are some manual skills that you're doing? What has worked for you in the past? And everything I'm telling you is based off of what happens in pro sports. Everything, the whole framework is on what happens in pro sports with short timelines. If somebody gets hurt, you have a quarterback out with a shoulder injury, and it's playoffs in 4 weeks, what happens behind the scenes to get them prepped for 4 weeks? That's literally what I'm going through. So if you ever wondered what at a high level, what to do with athletes in pro sports with short timelines, get them out of pain and back to sport in one seamless process, that is the foundations course. And that's what I'm excited to see you guys at. So if you're wanting to learn more skills to be able to set up your patients, your athletes, and increase your confidence, that's going to be perfect for you. So for those of you who come into my study hall, I'm excited to see you there to work on programming. And then for the foundations, I also have a webinar on the Tuesday before the event. I think it's on September 10th, and that'll be a 2-hour webinar, so that way you can get a glimpse into, sneak peek into like what it's going to be about. And if you're interested, just stay tuned. Follow me on Instagram, Chris Garcia DPT. If not, join my newsletter. All right, but that's all I have for you for this week. I will see you guys on the next episode. I hope you guys are doing amazing and enjoying delicious food, because I am not. And I will give you an update next week on how many pounds I have lost. All right, I'll see you guys on the next episode.